So Derrick Rose had another moment in the trade rumors, with the Lakers being the team that was mainly talked about. I guess the first question is, would the Pistons really trade D. Rose? Should they trade him? I mean, the rationale to do it is he's on a one-year deal, and you figure they don't see him as a long-term option. You could also look at it as he is their placeholder until they get a more long-term point guard. And we all know that the Pistons would like to compete for a lower playoff seed. Although, given that we're probably not going to have too many fans in the arenas next season, maybe that doesn't matter as much. I have no idea. But I think for the Pistons' sake, they could view Derrick Rose as their attempts at maximizing how good the team can be for this upcoming season. And obviously they care about that sort of thing. I think if they believed in bottoming out and really starting from ground zero, then they would have done it by now. Now, I think Blake Griffin is really the factor in which how good the Pistons will be. If Blake is healthy, then maybe they would somehow manage 40 wins or something. I mean, he was great 2 years ago, but I don't think he's going to be healthy. So I guess, if anything, it could be a matter of the Pistons see how good they are, and then 20 or 30 games into the season, then we see Derrick Rose traded. But if we can think about the offseason a little bit more, I mean, obviously the Lakers have been brought up, and I mean, the Derrick Rose fit in LA. Would it work? Would it not work? Obviously, he's not a three-point shooter. His best days defensively are behind him. His best days, period, are behind him, as we all know. Even if he has done a good job of bouncing back a bit here. I think the saving grace of Derrick Rose, if he was going to be traded to the Lakers, is that his mid-range jumper has been really, really good the past 2 seasons. Now, obviously, that's the least efficient shot, and you mainly just want 3-and-D guys around LeBron and stuff, but the idea can be that D. Rose can attack a closeout, or he can cut off of whatever LeBron and AD are doing, but even then, it still leaves quite a bit of room for where there can be dead possessions. Now, is there a chance that Derrick Rose's three-point shooting could be better like it was 2 years ago? I mean, maybe, but I wouldn't bank on it. The guy has been an above-average three-point shooter once in his career, so that should be remembered. Should also remember, when you're looking at the chances of D. Rose getting through a whole season healthy, that's a fear. But still, the Lakers do need one other guy besides LeBron who can break down defenders a little bit and get inside, and we saw how big of an impact that was when Rondo was doing it in the playoffs. Anyway, what would a move be for D. Rose? I mean, would you give up a first-round pick for Derrick Rose? I guess if you're the Lakers, maybe. Because when you have LeBron, the idea is once you have LeBron, you sacrifice your young players, your cap space, and your draft picks. I think that's why last year we saw them trade Shfee McCulloch to the Pistons for Reggie Bullock. By the way, they're probably regretting that one now. But anyway, maybe the same line of thought applies to trading their pick for Derrick Rose. Whether it's you can trade it on draft night, whether it's you can trade it 3 days after, whatever it is, that would be the idea. As far as other players moving, I don't know. The Lakers mainly just have salary fillers unless you really, really like Kuzma. Perhaps the Pistons would want Talen Horton-Tucker. But again, if you're the Pistons and you're going to move Derrick Rose, and that means you have to be confident that there is some point guard that is going to take over. Now, of course, they're picking 7th in the draft. There's also a good amount of point guards who are going to be available this free agency, and the only dude the Pistons need to re-sign is Christian Wood. So there's quite a few avenues for them getting a point guard, and from their perspective, they could look at it as, we can trade Derrick Rose to get something. I don't know what that something is. I think if they could actually get a first, they would look at that as an accomplishment. And then they still have the plan to get the next point guard, then they would probably view that as a positive overall. But anyway, they've got the 7th pick, and there's Killian Hayes, there's Tyrell Terry, there's Kyra Lewis, Cole Anthony. There's definitely some options. And for all we know, they could be the team throwing Fred VanVleet a $20+ million salary this offseason. It's going to depend on how much it takes to keep Christian Wood. But the Pistons also have a bunch of team options that they can decline, so they can get themselves a little extra money. That's the boring stuff. But It all matters, of course. Basically, there's a world in which the Pistons can re-sign Christian Wood and then get a point guard in free agency. Anyway, if I think about other Derrick Rose trades, I will say, while I recognize that all of us would like to see D Rose on a good team, that's not a guarantee. There is a chance that he would just end up on some random team that's not that good, who just needs a point guard and has a little bit of extra assets to give up. So, for example, I could picture D Rose being the Knicks' plan C or something if they don't end up with a different point guard this offseason. As far as what they've got to move, I mean, they can match the money for almost any sort of a trade. D Rose makes $7 million. They've got a bunch of second rounders. I doubt they would want to give up any of their firsts. I know some people would probably be like, wait, second rounders for D Rose, but I mean, to me, I don't know if D Rose's value is as high as some people on Twitter might think it is, like between his age and his injury stuff. Also, for what it's worth, the Knicks do have some good second rounders. They've got Charlotte's, they've got Detroit's second rounder next year, so those could be in the 30s, and you can look at those as effectively first round picks. But anyway, if I was going to pick one team where I think it would be interesting to see Derrick Rose there, besides the obvious of the Lakers, I hear the Clippers are also interested in D Rose. Of course, their draft pick situation is not very good. They have second rounders, but they're Clippers second rounders, so those are going to be in the 50s, and those aren't as good. And I don't really know if the Clippers have a player the Pistons... Well, if you gave them Shamet, they'd probably be all for it, but whether the Clippers would want to do that, I don't know. Anyway, the one sort of underdog team where I look at it and I'd be like, oh, that could be kind of interesting, and feel free to think I'm dumb for this one, is the Pacers. Now, this comes with the caveat of if they're playing with one big guy next season and if Oladipo is not on the team. I think both of those things are very possible. Because then I feel like the spacing could be good enough to offset Rose not being a three-point shooter. I think Brogdon is a very good off-ball player and that type of thing. As far as an actual trade, I don't know, man. It would have to be like Jeremy Lamb as the main dude moving, and maybe the Pistons would be all about that. I don't know. I guess I'll mention Milwaukee, because I'm pretty sure I was on the Derrick Rose Bucks thing last trade deadline. I don't really think the Bucks would do it. But if they were just that desperate to find an improvement this year, and we've already seen a good amount of rumors that suggest they're going to trade Bledsoe or look to get a replacement for Bledsoe, and I feel like with how spaced of a floor they have, D Rose's lack of a three ball wouldn't hurt them that much. I think what would hurt them more is how sometimes their offense just, especially in the half court, just gets really slow, and the motion just goes away, especially in the playoffs. But I also feel like Derrick Rose just loves mid-rangers so much, and I don't know if Budenholzer would be about that. The thing with Derrick, and I might have mentioned this earlier, is he's actually been one of the best mid-range shooters the past 2 years. He's comfortably in the 40s on his pull-ups and his long twos and everything. So that offsets some of the lack of threes, but they are still mid-rangers at the end of the day, you know what I mean? But still, we saw how desperate the Bucks were to get some more shot creation against Miami. So, D Rose does that, of course. As far as how a move there would work, DiVincenzo would probably be the main guy moving. Yeah, I think that's all I got. It would be cool to see Derrick Rose in a good team. Whether it'll actually happen, I don't know. I mean, I think about a team like Utah, and I'm like, well, between Conley and Mitchell, and they're probably going to bring back Clarkson, I don't know if that one's going to happen. I doubt the Rockets would want another guy who's not a three-point shooter. I don't think the Nuggets would want D Rose. Dallas, I mean, it'd be taking the ball away from Luka. You could argue that Dallas should have a little bit more of that. You could argue, why would you ever want to take the ball away from Luka? The Blazers' backcourt is already what it is. I doubt the Celtics want another guy who's going to go off the dribble like that. Toronto, I would have to assume no. Do you want to put Derrick Rose into the spacing black hole of the 76ers? So yeah, you see what I'm getting at. Or maybe you don't, you disagree. That's fine as well. Anyway, that's it. Shout out to D Rose. Shout out to the Pistons owner, whoever he is. The Pistons are still paying John Henson. That's kind of cool. They're also still paying Josh Smith for this 1 year. And that's it. It very much looks like I stretched the video to 10 minutes with this rambling. You only have to stretch it to 8 minutes now, so I'm just talking because I don't know.